All right, so we had another really busy earnings week. We had a lot of news coming out with Bitcoin. First things first, if you get value out of the video, please like and subscribe. Really appreciate that. So first things first here, the first story I wanted to talk about, BlackRock increases its ownership of Microstrategy to 5%, or what it's now called Strategy. And this is big news. And Bitcoin has not really gone anywhere over the last month, or maybe a little over a month, and it's kind of demoralizing some people, but you also have to keep in mind what a short period of time it is. It's still up over 100% year over year, and we have this story also came out a couple days ago. Apparently Trump is going to launch a Bitcoin ETF, which is quite interesting. And this statement from David Sachs on, I think it was Tuesday, one of the first things we're going to look at as part of the internal working group of the administration is the feasibility of a Bitcoin reserve. So this is something that I'm kind of disappointed about. Number one, that they haven't been more clear on this. And it's clear that they're working on it. I think it's very obvious that they want to do it. The question is, why are they not doing it? There might be some logistical issues. I can understand that. But one of the even the more concerning thing is how friendly towards crypto they've been, which is something that is really concerning, because you take XRP, for example, it is pretty much the definition of everything that's wrong with the crypto space in general. You know, they had a pre-mine. There's very little transparency with their chain. Ripple has funded the lie that Bitcoin's bad for the environment. They didn't even support Trump in the election. Like the list goes on and on and they support CBDCs. Like the list goes on and on for the reasons that they're not good. So that's something that's quite concerning to me, that they've actually entertained that it should be anything other than a Bitcoin reserve. So I am a little bit concerned here. I still think we're going to get it in some way, shape, or form. It might not be exactly how someone like me would want it, but I still think we're going to see it. And you also have to keep in mind that there's probably 15 or 20 states that have already proposed bills. I think one or two of them have actually approved it. So we're going to see how that goes. We have, I think it's the Czech Republic, is also planning on going forward with this. So frankly, it's only a matter of time. It's not if, it's when. So it is a little bit concerning to me that the price of Bitcoin has gone basically nowhere, even though a lot of this stuff has happened. But you also have to keep in mind that the price can be manipulated, especially over a short period of time. And you also have to keep in mind that we could, like, if Bitcoin was at $200,000 a month or two from now, that would not shock anyone, especially people within the Bitcoin space. Like, that would not shock anyone. So the same strategy still applies, in my opinion. Stay humble, dollar cost average, and forget about the noise. So there is quite a bit of earnings I want to get into, so I don't want to talk too long about this stuff. As far as the market goes this week, the S&P was down slightly, about 20, 30 basis points. The NASDAQ was down about 50. The Meg 7 definitely underperformed. They were down over 2%. Palantir was kind of the big winner on this week. They were up quite significantly. The equal weight index also was down about 50 basis points. Mid caps were up slightly on the week, so mid caps was the one area that shined. Small caps were down, I think, about 50-60 basis points. So it was the mid cap space that really shined, and I've said time and time again that I think mid caps and the smaller end of the large cap is the area that I really like. That's the area that I really like, because that's the area that has fairly well-established companies that still have a lot of room to grow. They're not very small, like a lot of the smaller cap names. They're kind of an unknown. They're kind of relying on future potential, and a lot of times it doesn't pay out, and not to mention, that's harder to project. So I still like the idea that the mid caps and the smaller end of the large caps will outperform. Even small caps, debatably, I think could outperform large caps. I think that's going to be close. The markets, they're still hovering near an all-time high. The S&P is still over 6,000. It was basically 6,100 at one point this week. So in the near term, especially with the tariff threat, it's looking like it's over. I don't see a major correction, but I do see something happening over the next 6 months or so that will lead to a correction. 10-20% has always been what I'm going to say, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it won't necessarily be this year. It might not even be this year. It could be next year, but nobody knows. So let's get into the earnings from this past week, because we did have quite a few to go through. First and foremost, Microstrategy. The big news was Microstrategy did rebrand to quote-unquote strategy, which I think it's not a bad idea. Because I mean, they're clearly their main goal, the main focus is Bitcoin, and MicroStrategy did miss earnings, but you also have to keep in mind that they changed the accounting rules recently, and the next quarter, at least it's looking like, will be the first quarter that they can use the updated accounting standards. And when that happens, their earnings are going to skyrocket. Like, their earnings are literally going to skyrocket. The numbers, I think Tesla added like $600 million is the number that was reported of earnings because of the Bitcoin that they hold. And I think MicroStrategy holds like at least 10x the Bitcoin that Tesla does. So MicroStrategy's earnings are going to absolutely skyrocket. And you also have to keep in mind that I think it's 2 or 3 consecutive quarters of positive earnings you need to be included in the S&P 500, and it's likely that will happen. So I would keep in mind that later this year, whether it's third quarter, fourth quarter, MicroStrategy is going to be joining the S&P 500, which is going to be huge. I think MicroStrategy still has a lot of room to run. It's inevitable we get a big Bitcoin pump, whether it's next week or whether it's next year. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. We could get a correction in between then, so don't necessarily assume that you're going to make a bunch of money and it's going to be easy. But it's inevitable we see a Bitcoin pump, and I think that's going to be really good for MicroStrategy. And also, like I mentioned at the start of the video, BlackRock is buying. BlackRock owns 5% of the company. That is a lot. Like, that is a lot. If BlackRock's buying that much, like, what more reason is there to doubt? Like, seriously, like, the biggest money manager in the world owns 5% of the company. Like, what more isn't there to like? Now, again, I know that there's issues with BlackRock. I am well aware of that. But one thing that people, I think people get wrong, a lot of people get wrong, is that they think that Bitcoin should be only permitted to be owned by, like, your average everyday Joe. And that's not how it's going to work in reality, because that's anathema to the free market. When there's the best asset in the world, i.e. Bitcoin, people you don't like sometimes are going to buy it. There's no way around that. You can't pick and choose, because the minute you pick and choose, you remove the best aspect of Bitcoin, which is the decentralization aspect of it. I mean, and the ability to, maintain your purchasing power. But that's pretty much the biggest sell. So you really got to pick one or the other. And at the end of the day, freedom wins out. Just because some bad people own it doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, look at what they say about Bitcoin. Oh, well, drug dealers use it sometimes, which is true. But I mean, drug dealers use the dollar all the time. Does that mean that we should ban the dollar? Like, no, it doesn't. So that's something that people really have to keep in mind. Like I mentioned at the start, Palantir was the big winner on the week. They were up very significantly. I think they're up like over 20%. They closed the week at 110, and if we go back a week, they started the week in the high 70s, so they would have been up over 30%, which is crazy, especially if they're up 39% for a company that's a $252 billion market cap. That is crazy to be up that much. But you also have to keep in mind that they have a PE of 546, a price to sales of 88. Like, that is just that makes Nvidia look cheap. Like, this is just absolutely outrageous. In my opinion, it's probably worth like $25 or $30 a share. So don't try and, I mean, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but don't try and chase this one. This one's clearly overvalued. It will correct eventually. It's just not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The next big one here was Google. Google released, they actually missed earnings and revenue. They were down, I think, moderately on the week. I think that probably played into the Meg 7 being down on the week. Google was down Yeah, they were down 8%, which is pretty crazy for a $2 trillion company. I think they're going to be fine. I'm not overly concerned. I think they'll turn it around. Does that mean that I'm a buyer where it's at right now? If we look at their earnings, 22 PE, 31 price to free cash flow, I still think they're a tad expensive just looking at that. If they went below a 20 PE, I think that's where I would start to get interested. The next one is Amazon. Amazon released good earnings. They just didn't release the best guidance, which is what caused them to have to be down on the week. If we look at Amazon, they're down about 3%. So also not concerned about Amazon. I think they're going to be fine over the long run. The next one is NSSC. They missed earnings and revenue. This is one I liked in the past. I did sell it. I still think it's okay. I just have a hard time valuing this company. I think they're kind of hard to get a reading on. I don't want to spend 10, 20 hours looking into it to try and get a reading on it. So that's why I sold, but I do still have them on a watch list. So if they hit a 52-week low or something along those lines, which they're actually close to, but I believe that's because of a share split, I would look at them. But I mean, if we look at their financials here, they are below their historical valuations. They appear to not be expensive, but again, I just can't get a good reading on them. So that's why I'm avoiding them. The next one is NXPI. This is one that released questionable earnings. They did barely beat earnings, but they did release kind of shaky guidance. They did correct down quite a bit after that, but it looks like they closed up on the week nicely, so the market kind of shook there. They kind of shook that off. The next one is EPD. This is one of the better oil and gas companies. They're an MLP. I like them. I've owned them in the past. I just think they're expensive where they're at right now. They did beat earnings. I would buy them if they got a little cheaper. The next one is Pfizer. Pfizer released, they did beat earnings and revenue, although this is a company I think is a clear value trap. I just don't like these kind of pharmaceutical companies. Too hard to predict. The patent cliff issue, like you name it, I just don't like it. I mean, a lot of people are attracted to that 6.6% dividend yield, but you also have to keep in mind that the earnings yield is 5.5%. So they're probably not going to maintain that dividend. So keep in mind when you're looking at a company like that. The next one is AMD. AMD missed earnings and revenue. They were down on the week quite a bit. This is one that just keeps getting cheaper, but I still think it's a little expensive, to be honest. If you look at the PE of 106, so it's actually quite expensive. So definitely one that I'm avoiding, even though it is at a 52-week low. The next one is Carlyle Companies. They missed earnings and revenue. I'm currently dollar cost averaging into this company. I still like it. It was down on the week. I still like it. I'm definitely still buying here. The next one is Disney. Disney did beat earnings. Not a company I own or would want to own, but I do watch it. The next one is CDW. This is one I've owned in the past. I sold it. I think it's a little expensive where it's at right now, and I don't know if it's in one of my top 50-ish companies out there. The next one is ODFL. This is one I really like. Am dollar cost averaging it. It's debatably expensive where it's at right now, but this is a really, really good company, so that's why I'm still buying it. The next one is Skyworks. This is one that they released pretty bad earnings. They were down very significantly on the week. I sold my position. I'm going to be honest on this one. To me, they've underperformed to such a degree that I can't get behind them until they clearly turn things around and get in a nice uptrend. I'm not going to be interested in them. The next one is WMS, Advanced Drainage Systems. They missed earnings. They did beat revenue. Looks like they were up slightly on the week. This is one I have on a watch list. I'm kind of waiting for it to get a little cheaper, though. The next one is ITT. This is another one that I'm dollar cost averaging right now. I really do like them. I think they're a good company. They did also beat earnings and revenue, although they did sell off on that news, but I still really like them. The next one is MPWR. This is Monolithic Power. One I have on a watch list. They're just too expensive to buy right now. They beat earnings and revenue. They were up on the week. QLYS also, this is also one I'm dollar cost averaging right now. They did beat earnings and revenue. Looks like they were basically flat on the week, although it looks like they were kind of up on that news. So kind of an interesting week. They were up quite significantly, then they ended up basically flat. And the last one is Victory Capital. This is one I also just started buying. They released good earnings as well. and they were up slightly on the week, I believe. This is when I actually just started buying. Yeah, they were actually up quite significantly on the week. I just started buying this company. I do like them. I think they're in a good area. They've performed well historically, so that's why I am buying. They are above their historical valuations, but they're still a 17 PE. I don't think that's crazy for them. So that is the news from this past week. If you, like I mentioned at the start there, if you get value, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more.